For over 2 centuries, humanity had refused to become involved in the endless wars that consumed the galaxy. While ancient empires fought over star systems, trade routes, and forgotten relics, Earth remained something few believed possible, a neutral power. Human merchants traded with everyone. Human engineers built stations for allies and rivals alike. Human diplomats settled disputes that had lasted generations. Most species admired Earth. Some feared it. But many believed humanity's neutrality was simply another word for weakness. Among those who believed that was the mighty Velker Dominion. Stretching across nearly 8,000 inhabited worlds, the Dominion possessed the largest standing fleet in known space. Entire civilizations had vanished after refusing to submit to imperial rule. Their motto was simple: peace through obedience. When diplomacy failed, planetary bombardment followed. For decades, the Dominion tolerated Earth's independence only because humans never challenged imperial authority. Until one small colony changed everything. The colony of New Horizon rested on the edge of explored space. Officially, it wasn't even considered strategically important. No rare minerals. No military bases. No secret research facilities. Just 35,000 civilians building farms, schools, hospitals, and a peaceful future beneath twin blue suns. The Dominion saw something different. A convenient shortcut. Imperial admirals proposed building a hyperspace corridor directly through the colony's system, allowing their invasion fleets to cut months off future campaigns. The demand reached Earth. Evacuate New Horizon immediately. The system now belongs to the Velker Dominion. Earth's response was calm. New Horizon is a civilian colony established under Galactic Navigation Treaty protections. We remain neutral and request peaceful negotiations. The Dominion laughed. Negotiation was for equals. Humans were merchants, not warriors. 3 weeks later, the Imperial Third Battle Fleet entered New Horizon. Thousands of civilians watched enormous warships descend from orbit. Many expected another diplomatic meeting. Instead, the first orbital strike vaporized the colony's communications tower. The second erased the central hospital. The third ignited the atmosphere above the agricultural district. Within minutes, entire cities disappeared beneath oceans of fire. Families fled across burning fields. Emergency shelters collapsed. Rescue crews never reached the wounded. When the smoke finally cleared, nearly 24,000 civilians were dead. The surviving colonists transmitted one final distress message before every communications satellite was destroyed. It lasted only 14 seconds. Children crying. Emergency sirens. The silence. Across the galaxy, governments expressed outrage. Some issued condemnations. Others demanded investigations. None challenged the Dominion directly. No one wanted war with the strongest empire alive. Earth said nothing. For 48 hours. Absolute silence. No speeches. No threats. No military movements. News networks began asking whether humanity would simply accept the massacre. Even Dominion broadcasters mocked Earth openly. The neutral species finally understands its place. Imperial citizens celebrated another effortless victory. Deep beneath the Himalayas, inside a command complex that officially did not exist, a single encrypted authorization reached every human defense command across occupied space. The message contained only 6 words. Neutrality has ended. Prepare all fleets. For the first time in 200 years, Earth activated wartime protocols. Shipyards that had quietly built civilian vessels opened hidden armored sections. Mining stations unfolded into weapons factories. Merchant convoys revealed concealed missile batteries. Cargo transports suddenly emitted military identification codes. Across thousands of systems, humanity transformed before the galaxy's eyes. The greatest deception in galactic history had just ended. The Dominion believed it had destroyed a helpless farming colony. What it had actually destroyed was the last reason humanity had to remain neutral. The Velker Dominion celebrated for 3 straight days. Across the imperial capital, victory parades filled the streets. News broadcasts praised Grand Marshal Kareth as the commander who had finally forced humanity to accept its place in the galaxy. The humans are traitors, one Imperial commentator declared. They build farms, hospitals, and cargo ships, not fleets. Their silence proves they fear us. The crowd roared with approval. No one noticed that every human merchant vessel had quietly vanished from the major trade lanes. No one questioned why dozens of civilian shipyards across neutral space suddenly shut down. And no one imagined that those civilian facilities had been preparing for this exact day for nearly 2 centuries. Inside Earth's Unified Defense Command, the atmosphere was calm. There was no panic, no shouting. Every officer already knew their assignment. Supreme Fleet Admiral Elena Hayes stood before a massive holographic map of the galaxy. Hundreds of blue markers represented human settlements. Red markers showed Dominion fleets. A young intelligence officer spoke. "Admiral, the Dominion believes they destroyed a minor agricultural colony." Hayes nodded. "They still believe we're reacting emotionally." Another officer smiled. "They have no idea we're executing Plan A." Several alien observers looked confused. One ambassador cautiously asked, "Plan A?" Hayes looked toward him. "We never built a military in response to the Dominion." She paused. "We built it in case anyone ever forced us to use it." The room fell silent. For over 200 years, humanity had hidden behind neutrality while secretly creating the largest industrial network in known space. Civilian cargo freighters? Their hulls contained concealed missile launch systems. Mining stations? Each could manufacture battleship armor within days. Deep space research platforms? They housed quantum communication arrays capable of coordinating millions of ships instantly. Even commercial fusion reactors had been designed with wartime conversion systems. Human engineers had planned for everything. Not because they wanted war, but because history had taught humanity one painful lesson. Peace only survives if it can defend itself. 3 days after New Horizon fell, the first surprise arrived. Dominion scouts detected what appeared to be an ordinary human cargo convoy moving through the Orion corridor. 8 slow transport ships. No escorts. Easy prey. Captain Vorak smiled. "Destroy them." Imperial cruisers accelerated into attack formation. Missiles launched. Energy cannons charged. The transports never attempted to flee. Instead, their outer hulls split apart. Massive armor plates unfolded across their frames. Hidden rail cannons extended from inside cargo containers. Dozens of missile batteries emerged from beneath false hull panels. Within seconds, 8 harmless freighters transformed into heavily armed battlecruisers. Captain Vorak stared in disbelief. "What are those?" The answer came immediately. Human railguns fired first. Hypervelocity tungsten rounds crossed thousands of kilometers in less than a heartbeat. The lead Dominion cruiser exploded before its shields fully activated. Another shell pierced 2 destroyers in a single shot. Missile swarms followed. Every human missile carried advanced AI guidance systems, changing course faster than Dominion defenses could track. The battle lasted 4 minutes. When it ended, 27 Imperial warships floated as burning wreckage. Not a single human vessel had been lost. Emergency transmissions flooded Dominion headquarters. Unknown human warships detected. They appeared from civilian transports. Our scanners identified them as merchant vessels. Grand Marshal Kareth slammed his fist onto the command table. "Impossible!" An intelligence officer swallowed nervously. "Our records indicate they've always been merchant vessels." "What?" "They were simply designed to become something else." Silence spread across the chamber. For the first time, Imperial commanders realized they had never truly understood humanity. Across neutral space, the same scene repeated itself. Hospital ships became fleet tenders. Commercial refineries produced antimatter fuel instead of consumer goods. Construction drones began assembling warships around the clock. Entire asteroid belts transformed into military shipyards almost overnight. Alien governments watched the impossible unfold. For centuries, they had believed Earth's economy depended on trade. Now they realized Earth's economy had been designed to become a war machine in a matter of days. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in stunned silence as intelligence reports continued arriving. One ambassador whispered, "How many ships does humanity actually possess?" The answer came from the Council's chief analyst. "We don't know. Estimate." He hesitated. "Our previous estimate was 1,200 military vessels." He looked around the room. "We now believe that number may exceed 100,000. The chamber erupted into chaos. 100,000? No civilization had ever assembled a fleet that large. An elderly historian slowly stood. His voice trembled. The Dominion didn't attack a peaceful species. He looked at the latest images of burning Imperial wreckage. They awakened the only civilization that spent 200 years preparing for the worst day in galactic history. The destruction of the Dominion patrol fleet spread across the galaxy faster than any official announcement. At first, many governments refused to believe it. 8 converted human freighters had destroyed 27 Imperial warships without losing a single vessel. The reports had to be exaggerated. Imperial propaganda immediately labeled the battle as a minor tactical setback. But then came the censor recordings. Every major intelligence agency confirmed the same impossible truth. The footage showed civilian cargo ships unfolding into heavily armored warships in less than 60 seconds. Hidden rail cannons tore through Dominion cruisers with terrifying precision, while autonomous missile swarms overwhelmed even the most advanced defensive systems. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. For centuries, humanity had hidden behind the mask of peaceful neutrality. Now the mask was gone. Inside Earth's Unified Defense Command, Supreme Fleet Admiral Elena Hayes addressed every captain in the human defense fleet. Millions of officers listened from ships scattered across thousands of systems. Hayes stood before a holographic image of New Horizon. Burned homes, collapsed hospitals, rows of temporary graves. She spoke quietly. "We are not beginning a war." The room remained silent. The Velker Dominion began this war when they targeted civilians. She looked directly into the camera. "Our mission is not revenge." Another pause. "Our mission is to ensure no empire ever believes it can massacre innocent people without consequence." Every captain saluted. The order was given. Operation Iron Dawn had begun. Unlike the Dominion, humanity refused to attack civilian worlds. Instead, Earth targeted military infrastructure. The first objective was the massive Dominion fortress known as Bastion 14. Located at the junction of 6 hyperspace routes, Bastion 14 coordinated nearly 1/3 of the Empire's fleet movements. Imperial commanders believed the fortress was invincible. It possessed 12 planetary defense platforms, thousands of missile batteries, heavy shield generators, more than 400 warships stationed permanently nearby. No fleet had ever attempted to attack it. Human strategists had no intention of attacking it directly. Hours before the operation, dozens of small civilian maintenance drones drifted quietly toward the fortress. Dominion operators ignored them. Maintenance drones were common throughout Imperial space. Unknown to the defenders, every drone carried advanced quantum infiltration software. The moment they entered communications range, they activated. Instead of firing weapons, the drones infected Bastion 14's tactical network. Sensor feeds froze. Targeting systems began displaying false contacts. Internal communications became scrambled. For exactly 90 seconds, the greatest fortress in the Dominion became blind. That was all humanity needed. A blue flash erupted across nearby space. Then another. And another. Hundreds of human warships emerged from hyperspace with perfect formation. At the front sailed Earth's newest flagship, THS Resolute. Nearly 12 kilometers long, the Resolute carried layered adaptive armor, experimental shield technology, and magnetic rail cannons capable of striking targets from unimaginable distances. Its arrival alone shocked Imperial commanders. One officer whispered, "How did we never detect a ship that large?" The answer was simple. It had been built inside a hollowed asteroid over 30 years earlier. No one had ever looked. Admiral Hayes issued one final transmission. This is the United Earth Defense Fleet. You attacked civilians under the protection of galactic law. You are ordered to surrender Bastion 14 immediately. The Dominion commander laughed. Human, you stand before the greatest fortress ever built. You have 5 minutes to surrender. Hayes calmly replied, You have 30 seconds. The countdown ended. Human railguns fired. Unlike conventional weapons, Earth's magnetic cannons accelerated dense tungsten penetrators to a significant fraction of light speed. The first volley crossed space almost instantly. 3 defense platforms disappeared in blinding explosions. Before the Dominion could react, the second volley destroyed the primary shield generators. Missile destroyers surged forward. Thousands of precision-guided missiles bypassed damaged defenses and struck military hangars, ammunition depots, and command centers. Not a single civilian structure was targeted. Within 12 minutes, Bastion 14, once considered unconquerable, had lost all combat capability. Admiral Hayes transmitted another message. Medical ships are entering the system. All wounded personnel will receive treatment. Any crew that surrenders will be protected under human military law. The surviving Dominion officers stared at their screens in disbelief. The humans had crushed their strongest fortress, then immediately began rescuing the very soldiers who had been trying to kill them. News of Bastion 14's fall reached the imperial capital within the hour. Grand Marshal Kareth refused to believe it. Impossible. Our fortress cannot fall in 12 minutes. An exhausted communications officer handed him the battlefield recording. Kareth watched the entire battle. No wasted movement. No reckless attacks. Every human ship executed its role with flawless precision. When the recording ended, the Marshal finally understood the truth. The Empire had spent centuries conquering worlds. Humanity had spent centuries mastering war. And this had only been their first offensive. The fall of Bastion 14 shattered the illusion of Dominion invincibility. Across thousands of imperial worlds, confidence turned into fear. Military academies that had spent centuries teaching the superiority of Dominion tactics suddenly found themselves rewriting entire doctrines. Admirals who had never known defeat now stared at tactical displays filled with red warning symbols. The human defense fleet wasn't simply stronger than expected. It fought differently. Every engagement was carefully calculated. Every shot had a purpose. Every objective weakened the Empire while avoiding civilian casualties. For the first time in its history, the Velker Dominion was fighting an enemy it couldn't predict. Inside the Imperial War Palace, Grand Marshal Kareth called an emergency meeting. The enormous chamber was filled with the Empire's highest-ranking commanders. A holographic map displayed the recent disasters. 37 military stations destroyed. 6 major fleets eliminated. 4 hyperspace gateways captured. Hundreds of warships lost. Kareth's face hardened. No more defensive actions. He pointed toward the center of human-controlled space. We will gather every available battle group. One admiral hesitated. Marshal, that will leave parts of the frontier exposed. I don't care. Another officer asked quietly, How many ships? Kareth answered without emotion. Everything. Within days, the largest fleet in Dominion history assembled. More than 18,000 warships gathered in the Arcturus expanse. Titan-class dreadnoughts stretched for kilometers. Carrier groups launched millions of attack drones. Heavy cruisers formed layer upon layer of defensive formations. The fleet was so enormous that it took nearly 4 hours just to enter hyperspace. Imperial propaganda celebrated. This single fleet will erase humanity forever. Across the galaxy, billions watched the live broadcasts. Many believed the humans had finally gone too far. No civilization could withstand such overwhelming force. Earth remained silent. No speeches. No threats. Only one fleet moved toward the approaching armada. The first expeditionary fleet. Its numbers looked surprisingly small. Only 3,000 human warships. Alien analysts were confused. Had humanity overestimated itself? Were they making a desperate last stand? Admiral Elena Hayes stood aboard the THS Resolute, calmly studying incoming reports. A young officer spoke. Enemy fleet will reach the Orion Rift in 43 minutes. Hayes nodded. Excellent. Another officer smiled. They're exactly where we wanted them. The Orion Rift was one of the strangest regions in explored space. Invisible gravitational currents twisted hyperspace navigation. Large fleets avoided it whenever possible. The Dominion entered anyway. Their massive numbers gave them confidence. Unfortunately, their size also became their greatest weakness. As thousands of Imperial ships squeezed through the narrow corridor, formations became compressed. Navigation computers struggled to compensate for overlapping gravity fields. The fleet slowed, exactly as human strategists had predicted. Hidden across the rift were hundreds of tiny sensor satellites. They had been deployed years earlier under the disguise of scientific research. The moment the Dominion fleet reached the center of the corridor, the satellites activated. Thousands of synchronized signals flooded Imperial targeting systems. Sensors suddenly displayed phantom fleets, false missile launches, imaginary explosions. Ghost warships appeared everywhere. Imperial commanders couldn't distinguish reality from deception. Orders became contradictory. Entire battle groups began maneuvering against non-existent enemies. Confusion spread through the fleet like wildfire. That was the moment Admiral Hayes gave the order. Phase 2. Far beyond visual range. Human railgun platforms hidden inside drifting asteroids powered up. These weren't ships. They were enormous automated weapons built into the rocks themselves. For decades they had silently drifted through space unnoticed. Now they fired together. Hundreds of hypersonic projectiles erupted from every direction. The first Imperial battleships exploded before realizing they were under attack. Seconds later, another wave struck command vessels. Fleet coordination collapsed instantly. Before panic could settle in, the human First Expeditionary Fleet emerged from hyperspace. 3,000 ships attacked with perfect discipline. Destroyers targeted engines. Cruisers disabled shields. Electronic warfare vessels jammed every remaining communication channel. Medical rescue ships followed just behind the front lines, prepared for survivors. Humanity fought with precision. The Dominion fought with chaos. Grand Marshal Kareth watched the battle unfold from the Imperial capital. His confident expression slowly disappeared. Entire sectors of his fleet were vanishing. Not because humanity possessed more ships, but because every human movement had been anticipated years in advance. This wasn't an ordinary battlefield. It was a carefully prepared trap. One built long before the Dominion had ever declared war. An intelligence officer whispered, "Marshal, our fleet can't regroup." Another report arrived. Then another. Then another. 7th Battle Group destroyed. Central Command carrier lost. Navigation network offline. Retreat routes blocked. Kareth closed his eyes for a brief moment. He finally understood the terrible mistake the Empire had made. They hadn't attacked an unprepared neutral civilization. They had awakened a species that had spent centuries planning for the day someone would force humanity to fight. And now, the Empire's greatest fleet was being systematically dismantled. The Battle of the Orion Rift lasted just under 9 hours. When the firing finally stopped, the silence across space was almost unbearable. Of the 18,000 Dominion warships that had entered the rift, fewer than 3,000 remained operational. Many were drifting without engines. Others had surrendered after their command systems failed. Thousands more floated as lifeless wrecks. The human First Expeditionary Fleet had suffered losses as well, but nowhere near what the Empire had expected. Across the galaxy, military analysts replayed the battle again and again. The conclusion was always the same. Humanity hadn't won because it had more powerful weapons. It had won because it had spent centuries preparing for every possible war while doing everything possible to avoid one. Aboard the THS Resolute, Admiral Elena Hayes stood on the bridge, watching hundreds of rescue craft leave the hangar bays. An officer approached. "Admiral, we've secured the battlefield." Hayes nodded. "Begin recovery operations." "The Dominion survivors?" "Rescue every one of them." The officer hesitated. "They destroyed New Horizon." Hayes looked toward the stars. "We will never become what they were." Within hours, human medical ships were treating wounded Dominion sailors alongside injured human crews. Food, medicine, and emergency supplies were distributed without discrimination. Captured officers expected torture. Instead, they were given clean uniforms, medical care, and a simple message. When this war ends, someone must remember how peace begins. Many Imperial prisoners could hardly believe it. News of humanity's actions spread faster than news of the battle itself. Civilizations that had remained silent after New Horizon now openly supported Earth. Trade alliances offered supplies. Neutral systems opened their shipyards to human repair fleets. Even longtime Dominion client states began declaring independence. One by one, worlds lowered the Imperial banner. The empire that had taken centuries to build was beginning to crumble in a matter of weeks. Not because humanity occupied those worlds, but because the fear holding the empire together had disappeared. Inside the Imperial Palace, Grand Marshal Kareth stared at the latest reports. Rebellions, mass defections, supply shortages, frontier fleets refusing orders. The empire was collapsing from within. An elderly advisor quietly entered the room. "There's only one option left." Kareth didn't answer. The advisor placed a document on the table. A formal surrender proposal. For several minutes, the marshal simply stared at it. Then, with trembling hands, he signed his name. The war was over. 3 days later, representatives from more than 400 civilizations gathered aboard a massive neutral space station. Every major news network broadcast the event live. The atmosphere was tense. Would humanity demand revenge? Would Earth claim the Dominion's worlds? Would a new empire replace the old one? Admiral Elena Hayes entered the assembly hall. Grand Marshal Kareth stood waiting. Without a word, he removed the Imperial Command insignia from his uniform and placed it on the negotiation table. "I surrender the Velker Dominion." The chamber became completely silent. Hayes accepted the document, but left the insignia where it lay. "We did not fight to replace your empire." She looked around the hall. "We fought so that no child on any world would ever fear an empire again." The delegates exchanged stunned glances. No demands for territory. No calls for tribute. No victory parade. Only justice. The first condition of peace was unexpected. The Dominion would fund the complete reconstruction of New Horizon. Human engineers and Dominion workers would rebuild it together. The second condition shocked everyone even more. Every civilization, regardless of size, would receive equal protection under a new galactic defense charter. No empire would ever again have the legal right to invade a peaceful colony without consequences. For the first time in galactic history, the law would protect the weak as strongly as the powerful. Every representative stood. One after another, they signed the charter. A new era had begun. Months later, children once again played beneath the twin blue suns of New Horizon. New homes stood where ruins had once covered the land. A memorial overlooked the rebuilt city. It carried a simple inscription. Neutrality was our choice. Courage became our duty. Visitors from every corner of the galaxy came to read those words. They no longer remembered humanity as merchants or diplomats alone. They remembered the civilization that had stayed peaceful for 200 years, until an empire destroyed the wrong colony. And from that day forward, every ruler in the galaxy understood one lesson that history would never forget. Never mistake humanity's desire for peace for an inability to wage war.